our forum. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Just for the benefit of everyone who's viewing this today, I'm going to do a brief introduction for you before we start off into all the questions I have prepared for you. So for everyone here listening, Pratibha Jain is a partner and head of the Delhi office at Nishith Desai Associates. She's the leader in the funds and regulatory practice, and her area of practice includes structured finance, mergers and acquisitions, private equity investments, and banking and finance. She has a wide range of Indian and international experience, having previously worked with Sullivan Cromwell in New York, Tokyo and Hong Kong, with Skadden in Hong Kong, and Goldman Sachs in Mumbai. In 2019, she received the Women Lawyer of the Year award in the law firm category for being an innovative and impactful leader in the legal profession. She is an LLM from Harvard Law School, BCL from Oxford University, and an LLB and BA in economics from Delhi University. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome once again.
Wow, it's really great to hear sometimes your own introduction and see you realize how much you've actually done in life. So it's a real pleasure to be having this conversation with you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to dive right into the questions that I have prepared for you. And the first question I wanted to ask you was that you've worked on some of the most excitement investment deals in India, including SoftBank's $1.4 billion investment in Paytm and Mubadala's investment in Geo Platforms. Working on deals of this magnitude and nature must be very exciting. So could you share your experiences working on these? What is it that excites you most about this work, and what are some of the challenges?
Actually, I've been doing this now for 20 years, and I've done it in some of the best financial market jurisdictions in the world. So there was a time where it used to be very exciting to do $1 billion plus deal or $10 billion plus deal. The deals that hit the headlines. I won't deny that it's still very exciting to see them hit the newspapers. But what really excites me now is doing deals that do help move the needle in India in terms of promoting investments into the country. Are unique, one of its kind, never been done before. I had set up the National Investment in Infrastructure Fund, which is India's first sovereign wealth fund. And that whole structure is very unique from a global perspective. It's just not been done globally. And that's, to me, one of the most exciting projects, simply because you're able to do something for the country, which is going to be for perpetuity. So, where you can actually make an impact is what really does excite you now.
Thank you. That's very interesting, actually. And sort of taking off from there, you've had a very global career. You've been working in New York, you've been working in Tokyo, you've been in Hong Kong, Mumbai, New Delhi now. And, I find that work culture changes so much, even from city to city, and this has sort of been pan-continent. So I wanted to ask you, any particularities about work culture that stand out, any funny, interesting experiences or anything that you want to share with everyone here today?
Yes, I've been very lucky. Very few people get the opportunity that I've had in terms of exposure to global markets. And that has, of course, come with its own challenges. Very early in my career, I was moving quite a bit from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and country to country and continent to continent. And a lot of time it was to balance, the career of my husband and me, which I think is something, very important, and all couples need to learn how to do that, because both your careers are important. But in the process, I got exposed to a lot of cultures. In fact, in Japan, when I was the first woman to be in that office, I remember I decided not to stay in an area that was common for foreigners. I went deep into the city where the Japanese themselves lived. And I remember going to a salon and the woman asking me, am I Chinese? And I was very surprised. I was like, I don't think I look Chinese. I look very Indian. But then I realized talking to her that she'd never seen an Indian woman before. And, to me, that was just so surprising. Like, the furthest she could think was China. And that also, made you feel special. Like you're doing something, you're breaking, not only glass ceilings, but kind of country barriers, not having seen an Indian woman. That just means how less Indian professional women must be out there. So to that extent, throughout my career, there have been a lot of firsts, and I felt I've carried the culture not just of India, but an Indian woman, and what that means in Indian professional movement to all these jurisdictions. I'm very proud of that.
That's so interesting and funny at the same time, but I guess that was the lack of exposure. So yeah, absolutely, that must be very interesting. Especially Japan sounds very interesting. I think my next question was sort of more a Corona-centric question, and I guess you might have thought this might come at some point. But one of the effects or fallouts, you may say, of COVID has been a lack of certainty in market conditions and policy stability, which in turn has, of course, impacted investments. There have been reports of decrease in term sheets and early stage deals. The trend has also been to sort of consolidate portfolio companies rather than diversify. And global investors are, of course, accordingly nervous. So I wanted to know your thoughts on this and how do you see it playing out both short term and long term?
And it's a very interesting question. I think if you're true to your strategy, some of these market shocks, unless it's specifically like you're working in the hospitality sector, there's really nothing you could have done to prepare yourself. But if you're true to your strategy, and as a firm, we are a very niche firm. We are not a full service firm. So for us, we have not seen a work slowdown. In fact, if anything, it has increased. And I think certain market forces have worked out, India versus China, India itself focusing a lot on, getting capital flows moving into the country. I think all of that has ensured that you have the big investors still interested in India and focused on India, which is the category we play with. But I think what's most important in today's day and age and for the new generation is to be very, very nimble. Everybody talks about specializations and super specializations. I started as a super specialist. I used to do structured finance when I was in New York, which was very, very specialized work. And then as I moved jurisdictions, I had to pick up in every jurisdiction what was relevant for my practice as a US lawyer in that jurisdiction. And that's taught me how to be nimble. Market forces will change. There was a time in my career where capital markets was the highest paying profession for the financial lawyers. And then over time it became commodity. And so you've got to constantly act as a lawyer and think of yourself as a lawyer rather than just a specialist of a product. And as lawyers, that would hold you in good stead, even in these times. If you're able to reinvent yourself, and that's the advantage of being a lawyer. You're just applying your knowledge of law to a particular subject. The subject can change, your law degree and your legal skills are going to remain the same.
That's very interesting. And to sort of piggyback on that, I actually had a question that was along those lines also. I think one of the criticisms that's sometimes levied against Indian legal education or training is that we don't provide adequate development and training of necessary soft skills. So what would your advice be to young lawyers looking to hone these soft skills?
Well, if you're in law school, do a lot of moot courts, do a lot of debating, but other than that, nothing. Learn the basics of law. That's very, very important. You need those tools. You need to understand your legal jurisprudence. You need to know your basic acts really, really well. And you need to learn how to hone your analytical skills. Once you come to a particular law firm, they should end up teaching you the soft skills anyways. But yes, the earlier you can get an exposure to clients, the quicker you can put yourself in the shoes of the client. I think becoming a GC for a short period was the best thing that happened to me, because having empathy with your client, we always see what the problem from our perspective, but once you put yourself in the shoes of your client, I think those soft skills will come naturally.
That's very interesting. I think people often say that if you want to know what it feels like to be a litigant in the country, you have to be a litigant. A litigator can't tell you how it is. So that's sort of takes off from that. That's very interesting. Now I sort of, again, talking a little bit more about education. You've been to both Oxford and Harvard, both of which are, dream schools for a lot of people, for the BCL and then the LLM respectively. I wanted to ask you, what were your motivations for pursuing an LLM after the BCL, and how would you compare your experiences at Harvard and Oxford? You've had the benefit of both, which I feel very few people have had.
Yes, I've been very, very, very blessed. I don't have some great deep answer. I literally wanted to go and study at Harvard, forever. It was literally that. But I got an admission to Oxford and Harvard together in the same year, and Oxford was cheaper, and Harvard gave me a deferral and didn't give me a scholarship. So it just made sense to go to Oxford, and once I was at Oxford, Harvard also gave me a scholarship for the next year. So, I got my 2 degrees in one. So it was literally that. But in retrospect, and remember, I'm talking 20 plus years ago, so there was not as much information on these opportunities as the kids have today. But in retrospect, Oxford is very deep and jurisprudential in nature. Like, the time that I was there, I don't remember taking my nose out of the books. Whereas Harvard is all about networking, and you're sitting with the JDs. It's not specialized course for the graduate students. So you actually, you've already done your undergrad, you've done your law degree, and by that time I'd done Oxford. So the poor kids, that I was competing with, it was just not fair. So it was more of a networking year for me than actual studying. So they're very, very different perspectives, basically.
That's so interesting. I can imagine when you say Harvard was so much about the networking, because I think there were so many events happening on an everyday basis, and that was what was being balanced.
Not just that, we had students from 150 countries. So there was a party every night. By party, I don't mean, some clubs, but somebody would invite you home for dinner, the rest of the class, make their local cuisine, and you just learn so much about different cultures and peoples, and they're all good friends till date. So
that's amazing to hear that they're good friends till date. That gives me a lot of hope for when 20 years have passed since I graduated. So I feel that makes me very happy to hear. On the Nishith Desai Associates webinar that was held a couple of weeks ago, maybe a little less than 2 weeks actually, the one thing that came across was that feminine qualities are very undervalued when it comes to leadership, and masculine qualities, or what at least people perceive as masculine, such as aggression, are overvalued in some ways. As someone who's in the highest echelons of leadership in one of India's top firms, I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on this? Do you ever feel a difference in leadership experience when you compare with your male counterparts, or is it something that doesn't affect you?
It does affect me. It bothers me, in fact, because negotiation is not all about who's talking the loudest, or who's talking the longest, or who's talking the quickest. I often will let the counterparty just say what they want to say in whatever tone they want to say, and then I will give my substance. And when you have substance, the person can keep screaming, but all that'll happen will be the screaming. And that's a tactic that's used often, more often than not these days, unfortunately. But I sometimes see my male clients lose patience with that technique. It's only when they've seen and known you for a while they understand what they're doing, because it's not common. So they're sitting there wondering why you're not shouting back or why you're not answering back in the same tone. There's some article I read today which was saying that female students do better at university when there are more women in the same class. And I think I understand now why, because then you recognize each other's skills, and you don't feel like, oh, I don't have the dominant skill that is required for success. There are often calls you'll get on where there'll be 30 people and you'll be the only woman. And then, you stand out. And that just, I'm sure inherently can't be good for anybody's confidence. So there are definitely issues. And I think those are issues just of numbers. It's not somebody's trying to put you down as a woman. I don't see that much of that in India. But it's just an issue of numbers. But thankfully, I think our profession is doing well in that regard. And now I get on calls where we are all women. And it's very, very encouraging. So I think it's a matter of time.
Just sort of piggyback on that question, I had one more question just to follow up on this, was that, in the corporate sector or in the transactional sector, I think that women are more and more visible and are rising to, the highest ranks. But in that sense, at the bar, that's not happening as much. Do you have any thoughts or comments on this in terms of visibility or recognition of women at the bar in comparison to the transactional side?
It's really unfortunate. Somebody was explaining it to me in terms of just being historic. The bar's been around for a while, and so it's just more difficult to break the class ceiling, whereas the corporate world has come in where there was more equality of opportunity and people recognized certain skills that women bring. But I think we just need some leaders to take the initiative, and by leaders I mean the male leaders. This cannot happen without our compatriots at the bar. The judges, I think, great responsibilities on the judges to forget the bar, right? Like the bench. I don't think in the world the numbers are as abysmal as in India today in the Supreme Court. And when your Supreme Court has those numbers in terms of, I think there's like 3% representation of women or something like that. When the number is so low in the court itself, it is going to become very difficult to change it in the bar. The same issue, right? Like there's nobody to recognize the skill that the woman lawyer is bringing when she's arguing in the way she's arguing. So I really am hoping that there is a stronger mass movement, your generation, our generation, all of us coming together and bringing out a movement to create visibility on this issue, because it's a major challenge. It's a challenge not just for women's rights. It's a challenge in dispensation of justice, because 50% of the population is not being represented. So their voice is not heard. So obviously you're going to have issues in terms of recognition of marital rape, or just gender related issues are going to be more difficult to come up in recognition.
So it's a trickle down effect essentially. So I think the next question was a little bit more about you, putting you in focus. You've achieved so many major milestones, and I wanted to know what keeps you motivated. Is there a milestone you have in mind for your future career? Is there something on your mind in that sense?
Ultimately, I just wanted to go to Harvard and study law in the Langdale Law Library. So I achieved that a while ago. So God was very kind. And since then, it's just literally been day by day, and taking what comes to you in its stride and enjoying it, every day. I know it sounds a little cliched, especially when you talk about a corporate law firm job as a partner in a firm. But I've actually been very, very lucky. I've had very varied experiences. I'm not doing the same job day in, day out. I get to do very varied work. And that's what's really kept me interested and motivated for 20 years. And I'm hoping that's what's going to keep me interested and motivated for, next how many years that life gives me.
That's so nice to hear. I particularly enjoyed the comment about studying in Langdale. Spent too many hours there, so I can only relate. So turning to like a more fun set of questions, which is sort of in the format of a rapid fire round. So I'm going to start with the first one. Who's the woman who inspires you the most?
Right now, Michelle Obama.
New York, Delhi, Tokyo, Mumbai, or Hong Kong?
Home is where the heart is, but I love Tokyo.
One thing you miss most about work during COVID?
New experiences.
First SOS call for a work-related issue?
My team.
All-time favorite legal or lawyer-related movie?
Legally Blonde.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's my favorite as well.
There's a scene, where she's doing a final argument and she's stumbling. It's the first time she's arguing, right? But it's so quintessential to what our practice is. She knows her subject well, which is how is a perm done, right? And the rest of it just follows. So that's the brilliance of that movie to me as a lawyer.
The movie is so progressive in so many ways, and I think I didn't realize at that point how progressive it actually was. My next question, which is also my last, is a very heavy one. But I think I might have guessed the answer. Let me see if I'm correct. Harvard or Oxford?
Both.
I'm hoping
I can't. Sorry, you tuned out.
I'm hoping you're going to say one.
Well, Harvard then, of course.
Thank you. That's actually the end of all the questions I have for you. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. You're so inspiring, and I'm sure our conversation is going to inspire many other young women lawyers who are going to be watching this. So thank you for taking the time out of what I know is a very, very busy schedule. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Maitli. Thank you for having me. It's this generation to me is very inspiring. You guys think differently. You're very confident, and you're out there to conquer the world. So any opportunity I get, I feel blessed. I think I learn more every time. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.